Hello, y'all on YouTube. This is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. I have a very cool review impressions of a knife that I had a chance to check out on the Apex Pass Around. So it's kind of a cool little thing here we're looking at. Today I'm looking at the Cetus. This is by Orion Knives, and it's kind of an interesting little knife that we're looking at, and I've got some details on it. It's made out of Amboya wood. I believe this is called Amboya wood. It's very unique. It's scaled on both sides. It's T8 pivot. It's a D-shaped pivot. So even though there's screws on both sides, supposedly it's supposed to be D-shaped. So it is captive on one side for sure. And also these are T6 screws throughout. It is 14C28N blade steel. This is made by, and I'm make sure I say it correctly, it's the name company is Dav Gear. Dav Gear is the OEM that's making the knives. I don't know anything about Dav Gear at all, but they are the Chinese OEM that makes this. Now this has a steel liner on one side where the steel lock bar is and engages the tang of the blade. The other side is aluminum. So this side is aluminum, which means it's not magnetic. I had thought it was titanium at first, but it's actually aluminum. So this makes this knife a very great budget-friendly knife for like $59.95 or something, like basically 60 bucks. Does have a hollow grind, which I think is pretty cool. It does have a fuller all the way through with a thumb hole here, some nice jimping on top. Okay, so again, you got a wood scale, steel liner on one side with the lock bar, aluminum on the other. Everything's nicely chamfered all the way around, so that's good. The clip is a steel pocket clip. The only thing I do wish it was a little bit longer, had a little more room, because you're going to have to flex quite a bit to get something in there. This doesn't seem like enough space, so that's unfortunate. It does have a good access with the lock bar to get to it. I mean, it's not the most ideal. So if you got big, fat, meaty fingers like me, it would be nice to have a little chamfering, and there's really none whatsoever there. So that's unfortunate. Though there is some cutaway. So, you know, there's that. So if you have maybe thinner, not meaty fingers or something like myself, then it's probably going to be easier to get to that. All right, so that's a little bit about the knife. We talked about the particular blade itself. I would call this sort of a reverse Tonto, Warncliffe, sheep's foot modified kind of. I don't really know what the heck you want to call this blade, because it's got a very unique shape, and I'm trying to think of what they call this. But they do say that this gets complimentary Tormac sharpening, which is water cooled slow wheel sharpening system. I'm not really sure what that means. I've never heard of it, but that's supposed to be the sharpening on there, and it is pretty sharp. Though it did round the tip a little bit, so I don't know if that's part of their sharpening. It looks like maybe the tip, it did corner up a little bit, which, if that's the case, you know, maybe they're just refining the sharpening process. And it's not quite as even down here. It's a little shorter here, longer blade edge over here. So, and then over here, it's a little longer over here than it is on that side. Anyways, probably hand sharpened. So, you know, there's that. Just take that into account. It's relatively works, you know, the fuller in there and everything works pretty nicely for a reverse middle finger flick. The little fuller hole does work as well on both left and right hand side, because it is bolstered. So it is a bolstered frame lock, or what they call a bolstered subframe lock, with the wood scale on top like that. So that's kind of cool. I think that definitely adds a little something to it. Definitely worth considering. Called a Cetus. I'm not exactly sure. I think it has something to do with a whale or something. I don't know the whole story behind that, and honestly, not something that really, you know, impacts me. You know, cool with the name, but I don't really care about the history behind all of that. I'm sure some people will find that truly fascinating. I don't, but very cool. Just like, you know, I know like Brian Brown, he likes to use terms for different airplanes. I mean, that's cool, but I could really care less, right? So whatever is your inspiration, that's cool. If that's your muse, it's just, I want to see a good functioning knife. It is rounded on top. There's no sharp edges, so that's really cool. Everything's rounded over here. I don't like this clip. I mean, there's way more room to get underneath the clip than there is actually underneath the clip, which is really unfortunate. That really bothers me. I feel like that's a huge miss right there. So that really bothers me. I don't know what this is, if this is a copper backspacer or what. I could not find anything about it, so there's that. The wood is kind of interesting. I'm not a wood fan, honestly, so I could really doesn't impress me at all. But if you like wood, I mean, hey, there you go, right? That's something to look at and maybe enjoy, but not for me, not my cup of tea. The blade shape is interesting. It definitely has a kind of a hook, kind of a like a bill hook kind of like shape to it. So it definitely is a, you know, slicer down. Definitely wouldn't be like easy for flat cutting on a table, but if you're like cutting into something, you know, plastic and cardboard definitely has some nice properties, especially with that hollow grind. So that's cool. Action's not too bad. I believe it's cage ceramic ball bearings. It certainly feels like it. Let's just make sure. I'm trying to read up on it a little bit here as we're going through this. Yeah, it doesn't really say. So I talked about stock beer. Yeah, I don't see anything on here. All right, so there you go. That's a little bit about the knife. You have a flipper. The flipper is not my favorite. It really, if you attempt to flip it button style, push down on it, it's gonna fail. I mean, and if you don't go fast on there, it's gonna fail. And you can fail it. I mean, you can fail it majority of the time. You really have to intentionally really push hard and make sure you are aggressive to use that flipper, or else this flipper will fail just about every time. Even when I do that, if I'm just off a little bit and I don't do it just right, it's going to fail. So to me, this flipper is worthless. Quite frankly, it's not a good flipper. That flipper should have way higher angle. I know they're trying to line it up here. What they should have done is maybe brought the handle up, something, because this flipper is really, I don't know why even have the flipper on here, quite frankly. Make it a top flipper or something. This to me is, you know, I'm not a fan of it. I'll just be straight up with you. I don't like that. To me, if I have a flipper that I'm gonna like here, it's working because I get over the edge and I get the momentum and then I got gravity on my side. But if I don't have that, I'm not gonna get it. So like if I do this regularly over here and you know, and I don't have just enough momentum, I'm going to fail this almost every time. Now, if I can get just enough momentum, I can get it in there, we're good, right? All right, so let's look at the lock. The lock on this one is like almost 90%. It's almost too far over. I feel like that lock should be significantly less. So that's going to wear in pretty quick. There's a little blade rock on this one for sure. I did tighten this up before, but there's blade rock still, so there's that. I don't know if this is a prototype. Maybe this is just a prototype. And, you know, with prototypes, you can be a little more lenient, so I'm assuming that. But, you know, take it with a grain of salt. Let's look at the detent as it locks in. It's not a very strong detent at all. So you know what? I mean, this is one of those cases where I might tune this to be a stronger detent, but I mean, look how far it is already. So again, I'm hoping this is a prototype, right? If it's not, then take that with a grain of salt. I just feel like this is, I don't know. I'm not too excited about that. Okay, so I'll just tell you, I have second thoughts about that. So that is that. All right, let's take some measurements on this knife. All right, it's 4.13 ounces, so not too terribly heavy, but not too super light. 4.13 ounces. Let's do the overall length of the knife. We're looking at a knife that is around exactly 8 inches. That's what I have, exactly 8 inches. Let's look at the handle. You have about 4 inches, a little over 4, and maybe a 1/8 of an inch of handle length. The blade length, let's measure that right there. Get a little closer so we can get a little closer measurement. We're looking at, to the base of the handle, we're probably, I want to say 3 5/8 of an inch. The actual tip of the blade to the back is going to be 3 and I want to say 3/8 of an inch. It's definitely under 3.5 inches, right? Cutting length. So it's definitely over 3 inches. So if that's a concern, definitely keep that in mind. Let's look at the blade stock thickness. If I can keep that up. Can we keep that up? Okay, great. So it's 127 thousandths of an inch, so 0.127 inches. Pretty normal, pretty normal. Budget category, absolutely less than $100 at 59 bucks. Definitely for all the materials and how everything's put together, I think that's should absolutely be a budget knife. Probably a little bit less, quite frankly. I do not get attracted by wood. If some people do, you know, there you go. But if not, I wouldn't mind if it was something just a little bit different, right? I do believe it comes in black G10 and green G10 as well, so there is some alternatives for that. And that is like about $10 cheaper, so that makes it about 50 bucks. That's something to keep in mind. There's you can get a black blade, you can get a exposed blade. The black with the stone wash is what I would prefer. If you're gonna do a black blade, it would have been nice to do black on black, but I'm not a green G10 kind of person. I'm not, survival, camo, whatever, military, though I support all of that. I'm not my cup of tea when it comes to my personal carry pocket knives, unless it's something specifically tactical. Then it's a knife with a purpose, right? But if it's an everyday carry, I don't need to look like I'm ready to go out combat missions or anything like that. So just my cup of tea on that. Everyone's a little bit different. All right, so EDC, yeah, it's EDC. Definitely has a unique edge and angle, so good for cutting down and cutting through things. It's got a little pokey tips, pretty robust on the outside, nice and rounded on top. It's got a definitely sharp edge. Wish that wasn't rounded there and really short there, but that's okay. You can reprofile this edge. 14C28 will strop up and sharpen up really, really nicely. I think that'll be nice. I think hard use as you can with a frame lock, especially when it's already engaged pretty far up there. You're not going to have a lot of extra life out of that. I'm assuming that the other ones won't be as engaged. Excuse me. A little tired today trying to finish up this review, trying to get caught up. So sorry about that. I would say that's unfortunate. I'm assuming, again, like I said, this might be a prototype, so I hope it is. Is it a collection piece? Absolutely not. It's a budget knife, so yeah, no. And as far as hard use for a budget knife that you can, especially 14C28, and this is the kind of knife you could beat up and throw out and get another one of, so right, for 50 bucks. So if you get the G10. All right, so design, overall handle. So the jimping and everything like that, I mean, it's kind of rounded. This is a little sharp on the wood, and you know what I don't like about woods being sharp like that is it's going to splinter. Get any hits, any nicks on there, the wood's going to chip out. You're going to get splinters on there. I'm not a fan of that. So the G10 would be the way to go for me. But even then, I would like that to be a little more chamfered. The scale itself is chamfered nicely, which is great. And this is rounded around here, which is great. And even the tip up here is rounded nicely. I just wish the scale that they lay on top was a little more rounded, right? Is there any weight relief? There's no weight relief on the aluminum side, and there's no weight relief on the titanium side. So it makes me wonder, could this knife work without that? I mean, I think it could. I don't know how well it would work without it. I think, possibly without the scale on top, it might give you a whole lot more room for the clip, which would be nice. It's not my knife. I can't take it apart. I can't try any of those things, but that to me would make it a little more, I think, enjoyable. I don't like those sharp edges, so I'm not a fan of that, especially if you're going to have a wood knife. I mean, if this is just something you barely use and you're not going to worry about dropping it, every knife that I have is a user knife, and if I use it, I want to be able to know that I can trust it and not worry about if I ding it as I'm out kind of hard using it based on the time, and that's not going to splinter and cut in my hand. So, there's that. Just my thoughts on that. It may be ridiculous, but that's how I look at wooden scales. I'm just not a fan of them. The clip, I'm not a fan of that either. So there you go. Opening closing is not bad with the fuller, little fuller line there. The thumb hole works as well. I mean, relatively speaking, it does work both right and left-handed. So let's see here. I was doing it earlier. Yeah, okay. Of course now I can't do it, but I was doing it earlier. There you go. Nice flip there, and then the fuller was working pretty well, I think. Yeah. There you go. Now the flipper on over here, okay, there we go. You got to make sure you get some momentum, and you got to get some velocity to get that open, and you can't slip or you're not going to open this. That to me makes this flipper very unsafe and unusable, so I don't like flippers that I can't really rely on, because if I'm coming in here, I'm quickly trying to open it like that, and I'm in gloves, or if I'm trying to open it really quick, that's going to be unusable. I want to be able to know that it's going to flick open and deploy very strongly and engage very well in the frame lock. Don't care for that. Fidget factor, you've got the fuller, you got thumb hole, the fuller line, and the flipper. Fidgeability, I'm going to give this a 5. And I'm giving it a 5 because the flipper is really, as far as I'm concerned, useless, but you have something, so you kind of get a 5. The thumb hole in the fuller is really well, works well down low, down high, so that's what gets you the full 5, right? So you can definitely get a 5 on that. Fidgety goodness, because of the flipper, and the overall, you know, access here, and there's no chamfering on there. It's not easy, and after a while it does make your thumb a little sore. I'm going to give this a C. This is going to get a 70. It's not great. It's not fantastic. I'm not loving it. Definitely not a knife that I would go out of my way to purchase. Probably would never buy for someone. So that's just my experience on this. It's a good design in the sense of it's a good attempt at something. It wasn't aligned. It was definitely off center before and remains off center. Can't really center it. It's not my knife, so we'll just leave it as is, right? So there you go. Yeah. Overall thoughts and final thoughts on this thing. I'm not. It's not going to be my recommended knife list. Do I think you'd be okay to get? I'm going to tell you that if you're going to ask my honest opinion, I would say don't get it. Just don't get it. I don't like this version. Maybe they're going to edit this. Maybe there's be a different version. I don't care for it. I don't care for the shape. Now, if you love the shape and the design, go for it, right? If this rocks your groove and you go, oh, I love this shape, and go for it, man. It's got a hollow grind, right? It's 14C20A. It's a frame lock. You got thin fingers. You don't worry about little, meaty fingers not getting in there. Go for it. Go rock it. Enjoy it. You usually wear really thin pants. You don't have to worry about the clip. Go for it. Rock it, man. Enjoy it, right? Get the G10 or get the wooden scales and just enjoy it. Enjoy that. And you just have fun with it. But I will tell you, if you're going to ask my opinion, it's not going to be on my recommended knife list for sure. And it's not a knife that I personally care for. So there you go. That's my thoughts on there. If you disagree with me, feel free to comment down below. Feel free to tell me where you think I'm wrong. If you have any questions about the knife or the channel, please feel free to comment as well. I do like to reply and engage with you guys. I do appreciate that part about the channel. If you have any questions or any recommendations for future Rob's Ramblings, I would love to hear from you on that as well. Hey, if you found this content fun, interesting, worthwhile, entertaining, or informative, would you please consider hitting the like button down below? And if you've already hit that like button, maybe hit the subscribe button. Subscribing and liking the channel really helps me to grow, produce more content, do more things, ultimately, even for you guys. I very much appreciate that. If you've done all that, maybe consider hitting the notification button so you can be notified of future content when it is dropped. If you've done all that, maybe check me out over on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Again, that's on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Hey, thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.